As people are joining the community talk, I'd like to welcome you all. We are very happy with this new community talk, co-creating co-creating environmental citizen science capacity in the Philippines. We welcome the speakers, Thomas Neyens. He's a professor doctor at Hasselt University and KU Leuven. And we have to excuse Daisy Lou Polestico, a PhD at Mindanao State University in the Philippines. However, she cannot attend. She has sent us a video to present her part of the project. I do also have to do a couple of practical announcements before we start. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. At the end of the presentation, we make some time to have a Q&A, and then I will pick them up and we will discuss the questions. Also, I would really like to mute yourself and put your video off during the presentation. During the Q&A, I will ask you then to unmute yourself if you have a question and show your face if you want to. This Zoom presentation is recorded, so we can put it on YouTube afterwards. I will now give the word to Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. I will discuss an ITP project, an international training program, which in short is Co-CiPhil. And the title has been shared already, Co-creating environmental citizen science capacity in the Philippines. And my name is Thomas Neyens. So the Philippines, you might have heard about the nation of the Philippines, close to the equator and consisting of many islands. And the Philippines is facing some environmental problems, things like pollution, for example, plastic pollution, habitat loss, overexploitation, like overfishing, climate change, etc. And research has shown that community-driven environmental protection can be very important in this. And what also research has shown is that Filipino locals want to engage in nature conservation, but they are typically insufficiently heard by their legislators. And public participation, like I said before, can be essential for democratizing conservation and making all of this conservation worthwhile. Now, Asia, as a larger region, understands the importance of and the potential of citizen science, and is also investing in establishing community-driven environmental citizen science research. For example, the website citizenscience.asia, you can find information about endeavors that are undertaken within this domain of research and collaborations with citizens. Now, the problem is that citizen science is a particular scientific paradigm, and it also holds a particular methodology. And what I've learned, and I will discuss this in a moment, is that institutional capacity in citizen science in the Philippines, particularly in the methodology of it, often lacks. So where do I fit in all of this? Well, like was being said, I'm Thomas Neyens, and I work at Hasselt University in KU Leuven. I'm an associate professor at KU Leuven and a tenure-track assistant professor at Hasselt University. I'm a statistician, and my research interests lie in spatial statistics, so that's geographical statistics, mostly within a citizen science framework. And I often, because I'm also a biologist, I often work on environmental problems. I'm also very active, or I've tried to be very active in North-South collaborations already during my PhD and postdoc. And because I'm a statistician, to explain a bit the ideas that I have and the approach towards what we were going to do in this ITP, I need to briefly talk about statistics, but I will keep it very low level. So suppose that we want to know if there are geographical differences in, let's say, biodiversity, something that we might be interested in when we look at an environmental problem. If you translate this to a statistical question, then you ask yourself, is there an association between location and biodiversity? And we assess that association through a statistical model. Now, in particular, in this case, because location is important, we call this type of model a geostatistical model because it's geographically referenced. And so we turn this question into a geostatistical problem where you have a region, that's the square, and you have a number of locations, and those are the circles where you're going to measure something, let's say biodiversity. You measure it, and you try to infer from the data whether there are geographical trends in biodiversity. For example, here you might think that, what you see here suggests that in the north, there might be a higher, or the northwest might be a higher biodiversity than in the southeast, for example. Now, biologists, scientists, statisticians will all know that the methods that we use to assess this problem rely on assumptions. And one important assumption is that you take a random sample throughout that region. And this is something that is very common among experts, but if you then ask citizens to do this for you and you don't fully explain then, or they don't fully appreciate the importance of a random sample, you might get something which is called preferential sampling, where citizens tend to visit those locations that they think will have a high biodiversity, and you get an overrepresentation of data that is coming from highly biodiverse regions, and that biases your results. And this is just one typical problem that in the data analysis of citizen science is a bit troubling. However, during my research, I have co-developed, and there are also other people who are developing methods that allow you to correct for this non-randomness to some extent when fitting, like when analyzing the data, so in your statistical model. However, what we have also learned is that in citizen science, there are typically many other reasons why people do not follow a semi-random sample. For example, convenience. People are going to collect data close to their homes or at places that are easily reached. And if multiple of these underlying drivers happen together, it's very difficult to correct for it when we are analyzing the data. So what I've learned throughout the years is we need to also try to avoid problems through study designs and protocols that are catered to non-experts. And this requires a holistic approach towards data analysis, because typically people think, oh, we have data, so we're going to analyze it. However, all statisticians that are statisticians in the room will agree with me that it is not only data analysis, it starts with data collection. And actually, it doesn't start there. When you think about data collection, you need to think about a good study design. And this, in citizen science, should all be catered to the needs and the skills, etc., of citizens. And then if you've done your data analysis, you need to communicate this also at the level of citizens, together with citizens, to policymakers. So this is a bit the view that I have on when working within a framework of citizen science, how you should tackle a data problem. Now, to go back to where it all started. So in 2022, I was asked by my colleague Olivier Tas from Hasselt University to deliver a course on introduction of spatial statistics during an ICP South workshop in the Philippines. This is a type of workshop that the Data Science Institute at Hasselt University yearly or every 2 years organizes in a southern country. And at that time, it was in the Philippines. And it was at Visayas State University, which is situated in the east of Philippines and on the island of Leyte. It was a very nice workshop. I felt a very positive vibe. People were willing to learn. And also, during the courses, after the courses, I had chats with local academics, and I asked them, are you involved in citizen science? And they said, well, we actually work together a lot with communities, but we lack this conceptual framework of methodology in citizen science. And by coincidence, at the same time, there was the call for a new ITP program. And I said, well, maybe we can try to think about an ITP, so an international training program that really focuses on citizen science and the methodology about that. And so I teamed up with Professor Norberto Mila from Visayas State University, and Desilu Polestico from Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology. In short, it's VSU for Visayas State University and MSU IIT for Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology. Why those two universities? Well, we have a memorandum of understanding, so Hasselt University with those two universities in the Philippines. There's a third university, Central Luzon State University in the north. There were less people present from that university during that workshop, so they were not really involved in this project proposal, which in the end I thought was a bit inconvenient. And so I'm going to talk about this later, that we are involving them more formally at the moment. But okay, we started to think about ideas for ITP, and we wanted to work on citizen science. And you might have heard about different levels of involvement of citizens in citizen science, and you might make the analogy with a forest. There's a lot of shrub on the ground floor, which is very important, but the higher you go up in the canopy of a rainforest, the larger the trees become, the rarer they become, and because there are less of these trees, and they harness also more biodiversity, so they're very important. You can think about a bit the same about citizen science. There are many minimal involvement studies like crowdsourcing studies, etc. They are important, but if you really want to increase your impact, you should go towards more and more collaboration with citizens. And the most optimal type of design, in my opinion, to have a lot of impact also on the society, on these communities, is really to co-create science with them, to work together with citizens, and to try to set really research goals with them. So what did we want to do? Well, we thought about workshops. We wanted to deliver 4 train-the-trainer workshops, and each workshop would take 2 weeks, and we would have 2 courses per workshop, so 1 course per week. And we would, the general framework would be citizen science in environmental research. So that is broad, but it would be along this line and mainly on the methodology in this. We wanted to do it in the Philippines, not in Belgium, but in the Philippines, just to make sure that many people could attend, because it's cheaper to let people travel within the Philippines and bringing all of them to Belgium. Also, the ecological footprint of that is better. So we budgeted at least 20 scholarships per workshop. In the end, we could award many more, up to 50 we learned when we were doing it. And we also included a number of scholarships for non-Filipinos. We would focus on university level trainers just because they already had a background in science, and they could then train this to their students or teach this to their students. There would be an application process with a letter, etc. So a whole process for each workshop, which made that we could have for each workshop new participants, but also returning participants. And the scholarships that we awarded, they covered everything: travel, accommodation, and catering, so the full package. What I didn't mention here is that the workshops, 2 of the workshops would be at Visayas State University and 2 of them would be at MSU IIT. We would cover a mix of topics, so quantitative and qualitative methodology, conservation, so we would work on all of these things. I do not have an expertise in qualitative methodology, but we could work together with some very nice people who knew much more about this than me. We also allocated a small budget for research and networking, because I strongly believe in research-based education. So if there was a potential to start some small research projects, that would be really nice. Okay, so then you think about your theory of change. That was quite a thought process. And I'm going to show here a brief summary of that, because I will, in the following slides, I will come back to this constantly. So the name of our project was Co-CiPhil, Co-Creating Environmental Citizen Science Capacity in the Philippines. And the thing that we had control of, the first step in your theory of change, is those 4 workshops. We wanted to strengthen citizen science skills of local academics. And we wanted to follow that holistic approach that I briefly touched upon earlier, where in workshops 1 and 2, we would mainly focus on study design and data collection, and workshops 3 and 4 mainly on data analysis and communication. Also, at VSU, at the time that we were developing this, they were also developing a Master of Biostatistics. So we wanted to see, or we wanted to also bring a few courses that could be integrated in that Master of Biostatistics afterwards. Okay, so what would be our direct influence there? Well, we hoped that through doing this, there would be more emphasis on civic studies among academics and professionals within the Philippines. And then hopefully as an indirect influence, that would yield sustainable citizens science that would yield co-created environmental knowledge. And then the long-term impact was to make that Philippine citizens had an increased voice in environmental policy making. Okay, I'm now going to give a short overview about these 4 workshops. So the first workshop was at VSU in May 2023. And there were 2 weeks, like I said. The first week was delivered by Dr. Maristela do Nascimento Rocha from Hasselt University back in the day, but now she's at KU Leuven. And she is an expert on citizen science participatory research and mainly in the qualitative methodology side of things. And she would talk about theory on participatory research, deontological issues and concepts there, and how to co-create science. And then in the second week, I invited my colleague Olivier Tas to give a workshop on observational studies and causality, because citizen science studies are observational studies, and those are very particular types of studies with some limitations. So he talked about statistical considerations and design of that and the analysis. It was a very nice workshop with many very novel forms of teaching. Maristela did a great job. Everybody loved her, obviously Olivier as well, but it was we got very positive feedback on this. And so that was a great start, I think, of the ITP project. And I'm sharing this picture. This was just in the evenings when we sat outside and had a drink and just talked with each other, got to know each other, because all these academics, and this is something that I didn't say before, they could come from everywhere from the whole of the Philippines, so or even outside, because this lady is from Vietnam. So we had like a group of people that did not know each other beforehand, and because of these informal networking events, they got to know each other, and this led to joint research, joint proposal funding, proposal writing for funding, etc. The second workshop was in November 2023, and that was held in Mindanao. We could not travel to MSU IIT, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but we did it in Cagayan de Oro in a conference center, which is also still in Mindanao, but a safe zone. And there we invited Professor Nathalie Benas from Hasselt University to deliver a course on environmental monitoring and management. So she gave some theory on conservation, socio-ecological interaction, because that's very important within the setting that we are. And then also, it was very rewarding, I think. She gave a course on how to write research proposals for this. And the groups that as an exercise wrote some research proposals, some of those submitted those as real research proposals to Filipino institutions to obtain real funding for it afterwards. In the second week, I delivered a course on study design for observational studies and citizen science, where we looked at power analysis, sampling method, and spatial design. Like, how do you, what is the importance of all of these things, and how can you bring this into the citizen science paradigm? Also, during that workshop, we started to think on sustainability. Like, can we bring all of us together in a network? And we started to develop this Philippine Citizen Science Network, which I will also touch upon later. Okay, this is a group picture that was taken there. So you see that there were many attendees, and that is because we used our budget efficiently, so we could increase the number of scholarships. The third workshop was again at VSU in February and March 2024. And here we went more to the analysis side of things and communication side of things. And the first workshop was, the first part of the workshop was delivered by myself on how to communicate statistics, communicating uncertainty, statistical visualization, and how to report statistics. And in the second week, we invited Ziv Shkidi, professor at Hasselt University, to give a course on generalized linear models. These type of models are very interesting, typically for ecological studies. For example, binary outcomes when looking at the occupancy of species counts, when you're looking at species richness. And he has his own website where he provides material to use in your teaching materials. So, and that all works through R. So he also explained and taught the participants how to use his material to set up their own courses. Again, very rewarding, if I may say so. Many participants and again, very good feedback by all of them. And again, some people from Vietnam. We also had people from Indonesia at other occasions. And then the fourth and last workshop was in March 2025. And here, that was again in Mindanao at Cagayan de Oro. The first week, we invited Maristella again to give a course on data equity and sustainable citizen science. She talked about foundations of data equity and data justice, bias in citizen science, and ethical data collection and governance. And then in week 2, Alejandro Rozzo Posada, a PhD student of mine, and myself delivered a course on spatiotemporal statistics for environmental citizen science. And we talked about spatial models, spatiotemporal models, and how to correct for bias that you sometimes see happening in citizen science. And again, if I may say so, it was a very nice course. So what were the lessons learned here? Well, first of all, we were a bit afraid about the mix of topics and also backgrounds of the participants in the beginning, but I think that we balanced this pretty well and it worked. People were helping each other. So in the courses where there was more statistics, then the statisticians would help the non-statisticians. And so it would all work. So, and I think that is one of the very nice things about this project, that combination worked well. Also, what I've learned is that you need to invest in non-teaching moments. So these informal social events were extremely important. Like we had informal karaoke evenings. During the last workshop, we had work evening courses on badminton. So people would play badminton with a badminton trainer. So that was all very good to get to know each other. Also, during the weekend, we didn't envisage this beforehand, but because we had 2 weeks, there was a weekend in between. And so the universities organized some events like doing island hopping together, etc. So everybody got to know each other. And then in the second week, there was, again, the more harder work of the workshop. And this really has led to them becoming friends and us becoming friends, because I have many friends now in the Philippines and also in collaboration. So I think that is very important. What is difficult is to stay connected in between workshops, because you go home, also the Filipino researchers go home, and then trainers, they go home and then they see all the work that has been laying there for 2 weeks, and you have to take that up again, and then you forget about many of the commitments that you made during those workshops. Now, I've tried to invest in then really setting up joint research meetings, discuss educational ideas, do joint project applications to fight against this. It did not work always, also from my side, but we have done some nice things, and I will show you that later. What I've also learned, and this is mainly because of the co-promoters who have mentioned this, is it's better not to use the daily allowances that typically are used, or Blair wants us to use it. I think that is a great idea. However, what the people in the Philippines told me is that if you use daily allowances, then people might save a lot of money of that just for other purposes. So they would maybe save money on food or on accommodation, and that is obviously something we do not want. We want to give them proper food, good accommodation, etc. So that's why we switched to these scholarships where we would pay for everything, and there was no daily allowance. Also, what but I was very inexperienced in this, obviously, when I applied for it. But when it was approved, our project, I thought, oh, we can travel to the locations that we are collaborating with. However, University of Hasselt did not allow us to travel to the university in Iligan city because the insurer did not consider it a safe zone. So we had to find solutions for that. And it's just for if somebody is here who wants to apply for any project here, always make sure to double check this with your university and with the insurer there. Huh? Okay, so what did we achieve? Well, we did these 4 workshops, and we thought, well, like I asked myself, is there now a direct influence? Is there more emphasis on civic studies among academics and professionals? And so after the last ITP, there were approximately 40 participants. I asked them, just in a very quick questionnaire, have you integrated knowledge from this ITP into, or the 4 ITP workshops into your classes, your research? Has this led to research proposals? And 18 people filled in the questionnaire. And from that, I learned that there were more than 12 university-level courses in which ITP-based knowledge was integrated. So that was in fisheries, together with citizens, conservation management, experimental design, applied mathematics, etc. Also in theses, so thesis project for students on citizen science. That was very nice. Also, ITP has contributed or even led to more than 10 research projects and more than 5 joint project proposal submissions. So that means that people who did not know each other beforehand got to know each other through ITP, and then in the end proposed or wrote a proposal for joint research to the DOST, that's the Department of Science and Technology, a bit like the FWO in Belgium, to apply for funding, and some of those were successful. And it was always based within a citizen science background, so in agriculture, fisheries, biodiversity, and, for example, ecology and economy. Now, on ecology and economy, we're going to look at one example there in a bit more detail, because it's coming from the group of Daisy Polestico. It's on carbon stock monitoring in forests with indigenous people in Mindanao, and it's called the Mamasila project. And we're going to now watch a movie which takes about 10 minutes, where Daisy explains what this project is about and what ITP has been able to, how ITP has helped in making this a project that it is now. So I'm now going to ask my colleague from VLIR to take over the screen and to show the video, and afterwards I will continue.
Our indigenous peoples possess a deep connection to the land, yet
Is it
they
working now?
face difficult circumstances. Economic hardships have compelled some to sell their land rights or convert forests into farms and developments. However, these forests are invaluable. They provide clean water, protect communities from disasters, sustain biodiversity, and store the carbon essential in mitigating climate change. In response to this pressing concern, the Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology in the Philippines has initiated a training of trainers program in Claveria in northern Mindanao. This program equips members of the indigenous communities to serve as citizen scientists, capable of monitoring carbon storage in their forests, safeguarding resources, and passing on knowledge vital to sustaining their ancestral domains. The Citizen Science Project of MSU IIT, in coordination with the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program, or NTFPEP, and the VLIR UOS International Training Program, empowers communities to safeguard their ancestral lands, thus ensuring that these forests remain a source of life and hope for generations to come. Now, the training of trainers program employed three strategic approaches to ensure that forests continue to thrive while also supporting local livelihoods. Now, first, the program focuses on discovering, developing, and commercializing non-timber forest products, enabling the IP communities to generate income without actually degrading the forests. Second, the program prepares them to engage in carbon trading through the REDD Plus program, which is a global mechanism that rewards the protection, rehabilitation, and sustainable management of the forest. Third, and finally, it emphasizes integrating the strategies, that is, combining non-timber product development with carbon trading to create sustainable and resilient economic opportunities. Now, through these efforts, we aim to transform forests from simply being seen as lands to exploit into assets to preserve, thus ensuring ecological integrity while uplifting livelihood. Now, some researchers from MSUIT, together with some personnel from the Non-Timber Forest Product Exchange Program, or NTFP-EP, conducted a series of workshops and trainings. Now, this a series of workshops and trainings were targeted and are actually targeted to teaching the IP communities to effectively measure carbon stored in their forest. Now, since measuring the amount of carbon stored in forests is an iterative process, so we had to train the IP communities and continue to train them into to the following. Number one, to properly sample plots representing the carbon sequestered in three forest types, namely mossy forests, primary, and the secondary forest. Second is to collect data effectively and estimate the carbon stocks across these ecosystems. Number three is to project future carbon sequestration based on these estimates. And finally, to train them to monetize the carbon sequestered to derive income from the conservation efforts. Now, to see citizen science in action and to make sure that our IP communities would be able to engage effectively in carbon trading, some researchers from MSUIT and together with some personnel from the Non-Timber Forest Product Exchange Program have conducted a series of workshops and trainings. Now, the series of workshops and trainings were specifically designed to teach the IP communities on concepts related to data collection, or data management, the use of GIS mapping, the use of some sequential designs. Now, in particular, a pool of researchers from MSUIT actually made a sampling design customized to the KKSP mountain range. That is where the Mamasila IP community are residing, and that is where the target area for carbon sequestration. For the last 2 or 3 years that we have been working with the Mamasila IP community along the KKSP mountain range in the Claveria, Hingo, in northern Mindanao, we have seen that the results are seemingly remarkable. These indigenous communities are capable, possibly not fully capable, but now capable of conducting field sampling and computations independently. Now, this achievement proves that science can be meaningfully shared, adopted, and embraced. Now, empowering the IP communities to protect their forests, uplift their livelihoods, and contribute to the global fight against climate change. Now, indeed, when we pass on knowledge to those who have long cared for the land, we do more than teach. We do more than research. We build partnerships that safeguard the future of their communities. But come to think of it, not just for their communities, but for all communities as well. To see more about the project, let's watch this.
Environmental degradation in developing countries like the Philippines is a pressing issue, yet protection efforts are often hindered by laws favoring economic growth. While many citizens, especially the youth, are eager to support conservation, they lack the means to effect large-scale change, and their voices are rarely prioritized by policymakers unless backed by broad public support. To address this, the Co-CiPhil project, Co-Creating Environmental Citizen Science Capacity in the Philippines, was launched under the International Training Program of the Flemish Inter-University Council University Cooperation for Development, VLIRUOS. VLIRUOS supports scholarships and partnerships between Flemish universities and institutions in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, focusing on global sustainable development. By promoting co-created citizen science, the project seeks to democratize conservation policy, enhance public understanding of environmental issues, and strengthen dialogue between citizens and legislators. Led by Professor Thomas Ney Jens, Hasselt University and KU Leuven, with co-promoters Professor Daisy Lou Palestico, MSU Iligan Institute of Technology, and Professor Norberto Mila, Visayas State University. The initiative builds capacity in both quantitative and qualitative citizen science research. A key outcome of the training workshops is the launch of new citizen science projects. The project started by introducing the Mamasila community to the idea of carbon stock assessment and how it can help protect their forest. In Phase 1, they joined lectures and hands-on workshops on how to measure carbon stocks. This was followed by field training, where participants applied what they learned directly in their forest. Phase 2 of the project focused on deepening the partnership between Mamasila, NTFP, and MSUIIT. At its heart was the goal of empowering the IP trainees by making sure they fully understood the process of carbon stock assessment. To support them, a practical data collection manual was reproduced in both their local language and English. The manual provides step-by-step guidance on properly collecting soil, leaves, moss, and other materials from primary, secondary, and mossy forests. The community itself took part in reviewing and refining the manual, ensuring it truly reflected their knowledge, culture, and needs. One of the key challenges identified in the project was creating a sampling design for carbon stock assessment, given the vast forest area of Mamasila. To address this, the MSUIIT team developed a customized design tailored to the KKSP mountain range, ensuring the effective collection of carbon data that could one day support sustainable livelihood opportunities through carbon commercialization benefits that can help strengthen both the community's well-being and the protection of their forest for future generations. The design now serves as a guide for upcoming fieldwork and data gathering. Just as importantly, it was brought back to the community for validation and discussion, making sure the approach is not only scientifically sound but also rooted in the community's own knowledge and deep connection to their land. With support from VLIRUOS through the ITP Co-CiPhil project, a field manual will be given to the Mamasila community, empowering them with practical knowledge and preserving wisdom for future generations as stewards of their ancestral domain. Currently, the team is now preparing for the upcoming fieldwork along the KKSP mountain range, which will provide the first baseline results on the carbon stock stored in their forest. These results will not only highlight the forest's vital role in climate action but will also open opportunities for the community to take part in the carbon market. With guidance and support from NTFPEP, this step can help transform the community's stewardship of their land into sustainable benefits, both for their livelihood and for the environment. This project contributes to multiple United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Among them are SDG 1, No Poverty, and SDG 2, Zero Hunger, by promoting sustainable livelihood opportunities. SDG 5, Gender Equality, by encouraging inclusive participation. SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, through forest protection that safeguards watersheds. SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, and SDG 10, Reduced Inequalities, by creating fair opportunities for indigenous communities. SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, by supporting resilience and sustainability at the local level. SDG 13, Climate Action, and SDG 15, Life on Land, by directly addressing forest conservation and carbon sequestration. And SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, through collaboration between universities, organizations, and communities. This project is made a reality with the collaboration of MSUIIT, Hasselt University, NTFPEP, Mamasila IP community, and VLIRUOS. Working together for people, forest, and a sustainable future.
Okay, so that was the movie. I will now continue. So I think that this is a nice example of a project that has come out of ITP, and there are more like of these. And I will touch upon a few of those in a moment. So there are many things that moved because of this ITP program, in my opinion, and I was very happy to see this happening. And I also think that this Mamasila project is a very nice outcome. Okay, so there is some direct influence. Can we think of indirect influence? Because indirect influence is something you often are not able to fully measure yet, but we thought, well, we see that there is more emphasis on civic studies. Is there already co-created environmental knowledge? And on one hand, what you see in the Mamasila project, you see that things are happening there, but you could also look at is there research already happening that is based on things that are taught during the ITP workshops? And there are. Just recently, I saw a few of the participants, because many of them became Facebook friends of me, and I saw some posts of new papers, and where they explicitly mentioned, well, this paper couldn't have been here without the things that I learned at ITP. So that was very nice to read. So for example, this is a paper by Kent Uba, who is publishing quite a bit. There's a second paper that both of those papers were published this month, and he mentions that he uses techniques that he has learned in these ITP workshops. Also, Jomar Besona has now submitted a paper on empowering communities and citizen science to assess the diversity and density of sea cucumbers in Mindanao. And Jomar was a participant in workshops 2, 3, and 4, and he told me that this was coming from ideas that were set up during ITP. So it's very nice to see that there is really co-created environmental knowledge already there. So that's, I think, a very nice outcome. Okay, so because we saw that ITP, at least from our side, was quite successful, we started to think, can we look for other projects? And a colleague of mine, Olivier Tazu, was also one of the teachers during one of the ITP workshops, but he has been there for some during others as well. He is a promoter of a project where I'm the co-promoter of, together with other Belgian and Filipino Indonesian trainers or academics, and that project is called Southeast Asia Biostatistics Research and Empowerment for Zonal Excellence, in short, SEABREEZE. And it tries to initiate joint research between 4 universities in the Philippines and Indonesia, and then Hasselt is involved in that as well. And it's interesting to mention that participant May Ann Palen from Visayas State University started her PhD through this team project, and that PhD is on citizen and expert science data analysis in aquatic ecology, and I'm the promoter of that PhD. So this is also one of the extensions of this ITP program. Another project that was recently approved was a VLIRUOS short initiative, which is in short Reef Dream, and it stands for Coral Reef Diversity Research and Monitoring. The promoters are myself, but then also Rafael Dumalan from VSU and Norberto Mila from VSU. Norberto is also one of the co-promoters of this ITP. And this is about coral reef biodiversity. So Rafael is a biologist, Bert is a statistician, and we are now going to monitor and analyze coral reef biodiversity within the region using data fusion techniques that fuse citizen and expert science. And it will start next week. Then there was also additional Hasselt DIOS funding, that's for developmental or developmental work in the south. For example, Olivier Tas again had some funding for to test a new hybrid teaching method where Hasselt and VSU were involved through distance learning. And I obtained funding to establish that Philippine Citizen Science Network that I talked about. And in a few slides, I will briefly mention what we're going to do with that, because it will take place at Central Luzon State University, CLSU. So what's next? Well, when thinking again about theory of change, there is this lasting impact. And impact is something that you hope that is there at the long term. And what we thought was maybe still missing up until now was, how are we now going to turn all the things that we have learned into useful documents, reports, etc., for policymakers? And we had some leftover money from ITP, but also that money that budget that I obtained from Hasselt University for the establishment of the Philippine Citizen Science Network. So we decided to organize a fifth and last workshop on turning citizen science results into policy briefs. And that will take place at CLSU, that's in the northern part of the Philippines, in November 2025. And what is very nice is that the teacher of that workshop will be a Co-CiPhil participant. So it will be a Filipino professor, Hasselt Jovita, and she has been at ITP, I believe, 1, 2, and 3. And this is also very nice for sustainability, because we want, or the Filipino group wants to keep this going. And what we are trying to do now is to involve the educators from the Philippines to give workshops, etc. So this is the first step in that, and I'm very much looking forward to it. We also invite policymakers, and there will be a communication event where attendees can present what they are doing in citizen science education and research. And at that moment, we will also further formalize that Philippine Citizen Science Network, and, for example, have some kind of scientific committee in that network, etc. Okay, and then maybe the cherry on the cake is, and this is very fresh news, or very, very new. We were invited, ITP was invited by the government of the Philippines on their international conference on science education. So it's the Governmental Department of Science and Technology, to give a presentation on the topic of empowering communities through citizen science, building a sustainable and resilient nation. And this is obviously a very nice opportunity for our project, because this gives us the opportunity to bring this message to a much broader audience, and to maybe have like impact on education for the whole throughout the whole nation. And that will take place on November 26th. In 2025. So I think that, I'm very happy with the results of this project. I hope that others are as well. I would like to thank all the people who were involved. Those are the teachers, the co-promoters, obviously, and all the people who were organizing these events in the Philippines. They did a great job. Also, the participants were amazing people. I gained many friends through it, and many collaborations, etc. It was amazing. I also would like to thank, obviously, Vlair for giving us the opportunity to do all of this.
I would also like to thank you, Thomas, and I'm cutting you short because time is running out, and I would like to still have some questions. I've seen there's some questions in the chat, so I'll start with them. Also, feel free to put your video on, and if you have a question that you want to ask in real life, please also unmute yourself. So I'll just start with the first question of Janet Kalinga. What is the difference between citizen science and community research?
Citizen science is community research can be a part of citizen science. These are all just terms, but I see with the term of citizen science is science that you do together with citizens. It is not directly science about citizens. It's not is not necessarily a form of, for example, social science. It's more a paradigm in how to do science together with citizens, and those can be whole communities. And in that way, community science can be a part of citizen science.
Okay, I hope Janet, if this reply is not sufficient, please do ask further questions or make yourself, but I think it's very clear. Then we will go to the next one. It's from Larissa Bonifacio, and she has a dual question. She's curious regarding the trainings for study design and data collection. What type of training was done for environmental data collection? And in these trainings, did you consider how the citizen science data will be managed and made findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in one of the work, I have to think about which workshop it was, and it doesn't really matter. But I gave a course that's something that I did myself on how to collect data in space. So I mean in like space in the 2 dimensions. I'm now talking as a statistician, but how to collect data about biodiversity and how to do this properly, and things that data collectors have to think about, and also how this can be translated to citizens. Now, on data governance and how to make that data available and how to interpret those data, we did other workshops. So, for example, interpretation, that was also one that I did on how to interpret statistical results. How to govern data was more approached from a conceptual, qualitative research methodology view. We did not have a real workshop on how to store data, etc., in the best possible way, which is a bit more technical. We didn't do that, but we gave we gave information on how it is important that the data are also accessible to the communities, etc.
Yeah, thank you for the answer, Thomas. Yeah, I enjoyed the presentation. It was a very nice visuals as well. So yeah, I think that would be a great consideration, yeah, for this project, because I know how it is in the Philippines. I'm also Filipino, and I know how these the data, the reusability of data in the future and accessibility is not always the best, even if the procedures are very standard and everything. So yeah, I think this is like very interesting thing to pursue perhaps in like future topics. But yeah, very, very nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. Then I have another question of Harvey Maligaya. I don't know if you're still present. She's a PhD student at the VUB. And she's from the Philippines and doing her research on water quality monitoring using remote sensing and citizen science. So she asks, in the workshops, is the sustainability of citizen science projects explored or discussed?
Yes, indeed. So thank you for the question. In the last workshop we did, we had a particular week on sustainability of these citizen science endeavors. And it really comes down to working together with citizens in creating science, etc. Obviously, I cannot explain all these things, and also I'm not a real expert in this. That was Maristela do Nascimento Roca, who is the expert. But we touched, or we devoted a whole week on this topic, how to make this sustainable. And then in the upcoming workshop in November, we will that is also part of making these things sustainable, because we want to make sure that citizens that what we find, that the findings of these studies that can be translated to policy. And if that happens, that will automatically be more rewarding for the citizens. So this is also one of these ways to make it more sustainable.
Thank you. And then we're going to the last question in the chat. Do feel free afterwards to also ask a question in real time if you prefer. So it is from Timothy Hudson. He is questioning, so given that the definition of citizen science, is it correct to infer that citizen science can be conducted in urban or corporate setting?
Yeah, so indeed it can be used there. For example, in corporate settings, at the universities, for example, that's not like a corporation, but as a university, there were also studies using with people working at the universities on waste management at the university. Urban studies, like I've been involved in COVID-19 studies, citizen science studies, where people had to report symptoms, had to report their mental health or their feelings, etc. So all of these things are possible, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for all the interesting questions and responses also. Thank you, Thomas, for making everything clear. Is there still a last question? If there is no last question, I will thank you all for entering this chat and making this community talk happen. And I will say to the next one, next September, we're having a community talk about the students from our partner students who come, for the ICP students coming to Belgium for studying, and they are giving testimonies for the new, to connect with the new ICP students starting this year. I'm seeing maybe there's a last question from Marvin. He asked, can policy making be applied in actual scenarios through community-based management?
Can policy making be applied in actual? Yeah, so that is what we want. If I understand your question correctly, that is what we are going to do in that last workshop. We're going to we're going to look how these findings in citizen science can really be turned into policy making. Obviously, the policy makers are not us, but we have to bring the information to the policy makers. And if citizens have created that knowledge themselves or partly themselves, they have a much stronger voice. So it is possible, for example, with the Mamasila project, if those if the indigenous people have more knowledge about how to collect data, how to analyze these data, and Daisy said that indeed this is already happening, they have a stronger voice when they go to the policymakers and say, you have to better protect our forests. So that's the idea.
Okay, thank you very much. This means the community talk is coming to an end. Thank you all very much for participating, and we will see you hopefully in one of our next community talks.